Hi, and welcome to the Indivisible Yolo podcast, a podcast by and for members of Indivisible Yolo.
Today we'll be bringing you the third and final part of our healthcare panel from last year. One of the main focuses of this section are the next steps for a potential single-payer system.
And as a reminder, our panelists include Millie Braunstein, who is a registered nurse and with Healthcare for All Yolo, Michelle Doty Cabrera, who's the Healthcare and Research Director at the SEIU California, Keith McCallin, who's a physician's assistant with the Healthy California campaign, Melissa Johnson-Camacho, another registered nurse and with the California Nurses Association, and Anthony Wright, who's the executive director of Health Access California.
So without further ado, let's pick up where we left off and bring you part 3 of our healthcare panel.
One of the ways that the funding proposals for SB 562 would be for a 2.3 tax of gross receipts for businesses and on sales tax for the consumer, and it would be a progressive tax so that it wouldn't hit the people on low incomes. But that's the answer. I would argue that you would have to, instead of thinking tax and therefore I'm against, which I see a lot, you have to think in terms of what are we paying now for insurance, and that would replace that. So right now, called premium as a tax, it helps make the conversation easier.
I'm going to ask that before you speak, ask to be recognized, okay? So we just keep this moving smoothly and comfortably. Agreed? Thank you. This gentleman.
Yeah, hi, this is kind of a follow-up on what you've been saying. For the last 20 years, I've been paying between $15,000 and $20,000 a year for premiums and co-pays, and that's with the $6,000 to $12,000 deductible for the two of us. And I was self-employed, so I paid it for my business too. So I know those are kind of numbers that are accurate. Say, I'm totally for the single payer. Say with the efficiency of care and preventative care and taking a lot of the profit out, we can reduce that by 50%. I'd be thrilled to pay $7,000 to $10,000 in taxes more if I didn't have to pay all that. We just had a friend visiting us from Ireland who was 32 years old. She's a graphic designer. She makes about $90,000 to $100,000 a year. I asked her what her tax bracket was. She says 40%, just nonchalantly. Like she said, "But I get health care," and I think how can we convince people that they are going to pay for this? We all have to pay, but it is worth it. And I think for us to say it won't cost us anything, for people like me that have been paying full freight all this time, yeah, I'm going to do better. But for the person who's uninsured or underinsured and who's making $100,000 a year, they're going to pay more. I think we have to be honest, because if we aren't, our opponents are certainly going to bring it up, and they're going to come up with some value per tax per year, and it's going to scare the bejesus out of you.
Yeah, so one of the things that the funding mechanism hadn't been decided upon by a team of reasonable politicians and placed into the bill, it would have allowed us to create what's called a cost calculator, where everyone could go on, plug in the numbers, and see where they are. But I think we have to take a look at the health system that we have right now. It's brutally regressive, and people at the top are kind of getting away with murder, really, in terms of the damage that our healthcare system does. So if you're going to look at the people who are making millions of dollars a year, I'm not going to cry for them. I can't. It makes no sense. It's going to take us time to educate. This conversation right here, I can give you information that's on the healthycalifornia.org site that will talk more about the details. People can get a sense of what they would be paying. But it really takes people, you talking to your neighbors, me talking to you, everyone's got to start talking. It's something that's not happening right now. We're all living in our own little bubbles, but it's education.
No, I mean, I would agree with that there is, that both with the question and with with the answer. And so I think that we should be clear about we should be able to answer those questions so that, because in the absence of answering those questions, the opponents will fill in the worst possible thing that you can imagine. I mean, they're going to lie anyway, like, right? But at least we should have some concrete answers for folks to sort of reduce it, because again, something that we've learned from many decades of working on health reform is that, when you're talking about healthcare and health reform, people, any change triggers a conservative instinct to hold on to what you have, right? It's a very natural instinct, and one of the reasons the Affordable Care Act, even though it sort of passed by whiskers in the Senate and in the House, was able, because it was largely saying, let's try to keep intact the coverage that people have now, and but then make the changes in the areas that are the most problematic in our healthcare system, including the individual market. I do think that the Affordable Care Act, I think, got us closer to a single-payer system by introducing at least a little bit more progressivity in coverage of the individual market, and it will be subsidized, to sort of mimic what a single-payer financing could look like. And it also helped beef up in public programs, including Medicaid, shoring up Medicare, and so that was a step forward. I think one of the things that we should think about is, while also organizing to the vision of universal health care and single payer, what are the steps to get there that create further platforms? And if we're scaling the mountain, sometimes there's the cliff, and sometimes that's what you need to scale, and sometimes you can go around the back and there's a couple of switchbacks, but that gets you higher up the mountain to their ultimate goal.
Okay, I'm going to allow one more question, and actually, there's a woman in the back who has a question, again, yeah, and I'm going to allow that as our last question, just in the interest of time, and I'll, if I can.
Hi, my name is Karen Bain. I live in Woodland. I hear you going back and forth a lot between the federal government and the state government and federal government and state government. And I'm kind of worried that about dividing our efforts and energy into whether we go for this one or whether we go for that one. With all due respect to anybody in the room who might be a Republican, I don't see the current inhabitor of the White House signing a bill that will go for single payer or frankly any kind of health care that will serve needy people. I think that if we're doing really good, like we did last time, we can maybe prevent something bad from happening, but we may not be able to pass something at this point. On the other hand, with the state of California, I see some potential there that we may be able to do something. And my husband works for the school district. I sit on the school board here in Woodland. I can absolutely attest to the fact that there are great needs in our community for healthcare. And I was just wondering if you could address that. Do you have enough energy to go both? I totally understand that, like, national single payer is the way to go. But in reality, as long as the current government is there for the next 2 to 3 years, I don't know that it's going to pass. And I've got to ask you about that.
When you guys answer this question, I'd like you to add on something, because that's kind of what I'm hearing, is what is it that the people in this room should be doing when we leave today? Where are our energies best spent? What are the things? I know a couple of things I heard were working with the congressman at the federal level, who, since we have so many Republican congressmen, and then also I heard SB 17, but also what is it we should be doing right now at the state level? So I think that's an add-on to this one. Why don't we go down the line, and that might be a good way to close. So.
I think that one of the things that I think is really important is that the discussion is stimulating, and we need to keep that discussion going, and I thank you for doing that. And since I am a single payer advocate and Healthcare for All as an organization, that's the total goal, is to get Californians covered for health insurance so that you have insurance that is accessible and affordable and of quality, and that everybody in the state, all the residents have that. And so that as an organization, we don't follow the federal legislation in terms of advocacy. Individuals within the organization certainly do and are following what is happening nationally because there is single payer legislation on the books there also. We also do follow California legislation. Anthony's very good about keeping us posted, and other people too. We have a legislative committee, and any bill that is looking like it will help move the state toward that single payer, we also support. And so that we will let our our members and our supporters that are in part of the organization know that. So if people what we should do now is do like you're doing today, is coming to become informed, and then read for yourself, and then talk to your senators and to your assembly people, and pin them down. Well, how is that going to help me? And how is it going to help my mom who, is on very low income? Or how is it going to help my child who's just graduated from college and, a lot of the employers aren't covering much of anything? So that you kind of start thinking of those questions and look for the legislators that we have here and hold them accountable.
So I think that I appreciate the question. It's something that we've struggled with just in our own organization this year, and we made a decision that we needed to focus on the federal fight because that was the ballgame. If the federal government gets away with cutting $30 billion, which is more than we spend on higher education, corrections, and state parks combined in the state of California, if they cut $30 billion, that could be the ballgame. That could set us back a generation and handcuff our ability to take any step forward, whether it's something small or single payer or anything in between. But you're right that it's mostly a defensive fight. And so I think that there are steps that we can take at the state level. I mentioned one of them, which was that's a meeting in the next couple of weeks, which is on prescription drug prices. We had other bills that didn't, 562 wasn't the only bill that got held this year. We had other bills that on hospitals and other and insurers and workers and other things that we're going to still keep fighting on. But I think that that there are steps we can take forward at the state level, but we also have to recognize that these are all of these are not one-year fights. Most of the fights that I've been in over my career doing this have been multiple years of keeping at it and recognizing that just because the person in power is there, so if the Trump administration is not going to pass a good healthcare bill anytime soon, or even provide them for approvals that would be necessary for the state to do something with Medicaid or Medicare money or money from the employer tax credit, which in many cases a single payer system might need, then we need to move ahead with what we can go forward with, while also setting up for the fact that he's not going to be there forever. And so I think it's just recognizing that some of these issues are on multiple tracks with multiple timelines. But some of them are very immediate, like in September.
That is a great question. There's a person on the national level who is all about HR 676. That's a single payer bill out of DC, the Congress bill. And they, in an interview, said, oh, well, I don't support any state level efforts at a single payer bill. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me with that statement. So anybody who says, we know the path that we're going to get to single payer and it's going to go, we forget the state, it's going to be at the national, or forget the national, it's only going to be at the state, it's going to be some combination of that that's completely unpredictable. What I argue and what I want you all to keep in mind as you walk out of here today, that if we stand and fight for SB 562, and let's say we get, 6 million Californians standing and demanding that, that will be an unheard of number of people standing and demanding something. And if we lose that, with that many people standing, we have just raised the bar on, or the awareness level of the need for single payer, and that could be what we need in order to pass the HR 676 out of DC. That really is the gold standard. I want that. I support that as well. But what I do here in California as an activist is say, we have to fight for this like it's the only thing we got going. 40% of Californians don't even vote. We have to knock on their door because I know most of those are desperate for fixing healthcare, just like everybody in this room.
So I have 3 ideas. One is absolutely engage in the federal fight because it is tied to the fate of single payer. It's just, there's too much on the line. California has a great role to play, and it's an area where we can work together and really win. California, if we can get our congressional delegation on the right track, we can win, and if we don't win, we can hold them accountable in elections later on, and we need to do that. So there's a website, fightforourhealth.org. There's a Facebook page. Please, we're having events throughout the state, focus on the federal fight, and it would be great to have folks engage in that. The second suggestion, and I know there may be folks who, may bristle at this a little bit, but it's a concept that I learned working through the legislative process. And SEIU has done some very audacious, bold things. We helped pass $15 an hour minimum wage in California. And that was something that there were a lot of people who said you can never get there. But let me just say, in working out the deal to make that a reality in California, there were compromises that were made. There were decisions that were made that were tough. And a principle that you learn in the legislative process is don't marry your bill, okay? Don't get so in love with it that you think there's nothing wrong with it, right? And I've worked on bills where I thought, this is so simple, who could possibly disagree with it? And then people come out of the woodwork. And it's not always people who have bad intentions or who are motivated by the wrong things, okay? One of the things, I'm taking this very humbly. I'm studying and I'm trying to learn as much as I can to help guide our organization forward. One of the things I learned, for example, is physician student loan debt, right? Where does that factor into things? If you're gonna bring the cost of healthcare way down, that means paying doctors less, right? What do you have to do if you're gonna pay them less? You have to do something about their student loan debt, right? So there's all these other little things that we actually should be thinking about. We have to think about things that'll help make it step back a few steps and say, how can this be a stronger, better bill? And to work from within the coalition to make that a reality, because that'll help us all. And then the third thing I'll say is union, protect our labor unions. We are the bread and butter of the progressive movement, and we are under a mortal threat. There are court decisions that are winding their way through, and by next year, they could devastate and decimate the labor union movement in our country as we know it. And if we don't get everybody who's aligned on the progressive side to fight back against that, we won't have the collective resources of working people working to make this a better country. And so I urge you to please stand up for our unions, fight for our unions, because we're under attack too.
I agree with that too. So I'll follow up with a few more things that I think can help, which is, one thing is, we gotta get the dark money out of the politics. We can't keep buying these politicians. They're never going to change their mind and keep the profit out of things if we don't change that. So one of the things, like the lady who asked the question, is getting involved. So she's a school board member. I'm a delegate. We've got a state senate guy. Everybody needs to, if you can't run for something, then go out and campaign for something, even if it's not single payer that you're passionate about. find something that you are passionate about and get involved with it, because we got to get the politicians in there that are going to hear the people and not the campaign money that's flowing in. So that's number one. And I don't think any of this will pass until we do that. That's just what I'm seeing is just the profit speaks so much louder than the people, unfortunately. So we have to speak up and speak louder and be involved in that. So the other thing is that you got to read the bill. You got to read the bill out there. You got to read what's in there, and then think of your own ideas. I mean, be a part of the solution. Be a part of the discussion. That was one of the things that CNA was working on in the Capitol, was going to all the legislators and getting their feedback and getting a really complete bill. So it was really sad to see it get pulled like that when we had those amendments and we're ready to go. So. But you definitely have to be educated, because there's going to be people that say things like, oh, I don't know, there's all those people in Canada that are waiting for stuff and then they just die because they don't get it. And I'm like, but have you looked at the research on it? I mean, they have way better outcomes than we do, so what's going on with that? And why is our profit system in one of these great systems, yet we have one of the worst health outcomes in the entire world, So we have to be educated. We have to be educated. So read the bill, read all sides. I love having discussions with multiple groups, because maybe there's something I agree with, maybe there's something I don't agree with, but I can go look it up and I can educate myself on it, and that makes me a better person to educate people, because it's not the first time I'm going to get that argument, and I want to be prepared and I want to be educated. So we all have to be educated and we all have to be involved.
Thank you very much.
So that'll wrap up the healthcare panel. Once again, our guests on that, the panelists, were Millie Braunstein from Healthcare for All Yolo, Michelle Doty Cabrera from SEIU California, Keith McCallin from the Healthy California Campaign, Melissa Johnson-Camacho from the California Nurses Association, and Anthony Wright from Health Access California. If you missed parts 1 and 2, they are on our SoundCloud and iTunes feed. It's really easy to go back and find them. You can go back and look for parts 1 and 2 of this healthcare panel to get the rest. And if listening to that panel made you get a little bit fired up and want to do something in support of what you think needs to happen for the future of healthcare, there's a couple calls you can make. First of all, SB 562, that's the California bill version of the bill that would create a single-payer type system here in California, is currently stalled in the state legislature, so you can call your local representatives, who, of course, here in Yolo are Bill Dodd in the state Senate and Cecilia Aguiar-Curry in the State Assembly, and you can give them a call, and if you like to support SB 562, call them. You can ask them to continue to support the bill and help to get it moved out into debate and start to make things happen there in the state. Additionally, on the federal level, there is H.R. 676, the Expanded and Improved Medicare for All Act, that is currently in Congress, and John Garamendi is actually a co-sponsor of that. So you can give him a call as well to thank him for his support for H.R. 676. And yeah, like you heard in the podcast, there's also more you can find out about SB 562. If you want to, you can go to healthycaliforniaact.org. That's the name of the bill, SB 562, the Healthy California Act. You can find out more information there online. On a related note, the deadline to register to vote in the June 5th primary election is quickly approaching. There's only about 3 more weeks. May 21st is going to be the deadline to register to vote in time for the June 5th election. So if you are not registered to vote, you can go online. It's very easy, to sos.ca.gov. That's Alex Padilla, the California Secretary of State's website, and you can register to vote. There are a lot of things coming up in this next primary election, especially local things, Davis City Council, Winters City Council as well, along with, of course, a number of statewide and federal primary races. So that's coming up. Once again, the deadline to register to vote is very soon. That's going to be May 21st for the June 5th election.
And Indivisible Yolo has a couple events coming up. So every Wednesday we have our happy hour, which is at 6 p.m. at Woodstocks in Davis. we'll be writing some postcards with Sister District and postcards to voters for a couple races, including Cecil Webster in Texas, Javier Fernandez for Florida State House, and Joe Burney for Lane County Commissioner in Oregon. Those are some of the sort of smaller races that we'll be writing for, but as we've seen here in Yolo, every single race counts. All of these positions are incredibly important to the citizens that live there, and we're postcarding to voters to make sure that folks show up at the polls and make their voices heard. You can also check us out every weekend registering voters, both in Woodland and in Davis. If you'd like to get tuned into that, you can check out more information on our website and get in touch with us at indivisibleyolo@gmail.com.
And if you didn't already know, that website is indivisibleyolo.org. Very easy to find.
Absolutely. And our Facebook page is at Indivisible Yolo. It's all pretty straightforward. And then, of course, we have our general meetings where we brainstorm actions like what we're going to do if Mueller is fired, emergency action. We brainstorm emergency action plans. We also discuss our meetings with John Garamendi and his staff, as well as Feinstein and her staff, and any other meetings we've had. We'll be talking about the meeting with Cecilia Aguiar-Curry's staff and our recent victory with AB 3131. And in addition to brainstorming the issues that we're going to be bringing to him, to Garamendi, to our senators, and to our state representatives, and our following and subsequent meetings. So it's a good way to get plugged in with us to hear what we're up to, how we're talking to our representatives, and also make your voice heard, so that we can advocate for you. If you can't make it to the Capitol, we can make sure that we have folks who are going in your place to help amplify your voice. And speaking of amplify.
Oh, wow. What a transition. There is a great app you can get if you want a good way to keep up, or if you're not sure what calls to make on a certain day. Amplify is a very useful app. It's really easy to use. You sign up for an account and join our team, and you will get every day calls that you can make, whether it be to your representatives in the State House, in the Assembly and Senate, or if they're federal calls to either John Garamendi or Dianne Feinstein or Kamala Harris, or maybe it's to a cabinet member who, for instance, say Ryan Zinke is going to propose something that's going to affect our national recreation here in Northern California. You can call his office too. So this app gives you calls to make. It makes it really easy. It's a very useful app, and you can get it by going to the App Store or Google Play and looking for Amplify and the word Civic. And then you can join our team to get those notifications. And the team code you would put in is 393-849-971. 393-849-971. And if you need any more information about that, or for whatever reason you can't find it, there's always links to it posted on the Facebook and the website at Indivisible Yolo and indivisibleyolo.org. So very useful app, very easy to find it if you can't get it. And it will really help you. If you're not nervous about making calls, you're not really sure where to start, it's a good way to start.
Yeah, there's even scripts on there. It's really nice. Even if you know what you're going to say, sometimes it's nice to just have the words in the front of your mind. You can also get in touch with us here at the podcast at indivisibleyolopodcast@gmail.com. Just shoot us an email. We always love hearing your questions and comments. And I think that'll about do it for us. I'm Isabel Warner.
I'm Andy Clausen.
Thanks for listening.